Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar. My name is Naveed Manzoor. I am the author of the course that we have for Certified Internet Research Specialists. And this is the slide just to give you an overview or just to give you a quick review on where I'm coming from, so you have an idea of my background. Let's look at what we are to discuss today. Our topic is Internet Research Skills, Methods in Google Search. So what does this mean for my audience today? That basically means it's an overview and an introduction to the two aspects of Google search, which is what we are going to refer to as a standard method or standard methodology we will adopt without talking much about other browsers or other sort of search engines. That's because we have to make a choice and stick to one thing as a reference or one browser or one environment so that there is no distraction and the questions are very specific and the answers are also going to be revolving around Google search methods. And our core discussion is in two parts. We've got part one, which talks about how to strategize and organize web search, and the second part would be Google search methods. We will talk about a little bit of intro on to what is involved in Google search methods and what Google methods mean. The third part that I am going to discuss with you, which is going to be pretty much after we get done with part one and two, and that, in my opinion, would actually take up all our 75 minutes. But what is to come next, and that would be optional, is for you to know and understand what certification is about and what we deliver in our courses, in our curriculum. So that would be optional. But 75 minutes solid, I intend to finish up part one and part two, as you could see right over here. So let's just get started. From part one of the overview, let's look at what the internet search entails. And for many of us, search and research are two different words, especially those that are doing research as a full-time profession versus those who are doing search for their own professional reasons or for their reason of knowledge or for any reason that requires for them to do it not as a profession but as part of their search for finding something very specific, not on continuous basis. So that's purely search. So the difference between search and research we need to understand, because the approach to both of these are different when you are collecting information and using internet. So to say that search and research are the same, first of all, from the meanings perspective, they both have different meaning depending on the depth of search that you're doing and the type of burden of research or the burden of collecting the information and presenting it in a more traditional research way. That is what the differentiator would be between the search and the research. So let's just look at the difference between search is trying to find something by looking or otherwise seeking carefully. That means it has to do with finding something, finding facts, finding information. It is a discovery of facts. Whereas a research is more methodical and it has a higher burden of responsibility. And by definition, it talks about systematic investigation. And there are 10 different definitions for research as well, and some of them are controversial, so we don't want to get into that. So let's look at our primary objective, which is to see how we are going to approach as someone who is to do either research or search. So I'm going to use the word search more versus the word research, because my objective would be to talk more about how to do web search. So the terminology I would be using search, but there could be interchange, or there could be I might be just using it interchangeably. So do not to get confused about it. So let's assume that search and research, for the sake of what we are to discuss, means the same thing. So the primary objective of any type of search would depend on, or you could say the purpose of your search would have to be developed, identified, and would have to be covered for you to design any sort of a strategy or work plan to do your search. So the purpose could be the type of search you're doing. For instance, if it is academic, writers and journalists have different requirements and different types of search that they need to do, and then you've got legal support, evidence collection, and there could be 20 more. So depending on the type of search, you are obviously going to strategize it accordingly. So what could be the strategy for academic search? If you're a writer, what should be your strategy? All strategies are different. And not to before I forget to mention that I have in my career, as someone who's been doing online search extensively, I don't find that any two searches or any two types, or you could say the assigned investigations or research that we get are the same. They always have some elements which are different, or they could be major differentiators, even being in the same topic or in the same profession or the same sort of heading that I'm using. For instance, in legal support, there could be 10 different types of searches depending on the peculiarity or the circumstances or situation. So it is all situational, and no two researches I found that are exactly the same. Then we've got action. What is the action plan? Where we have defined all of these as the types, we also have to know that the research or search, the idea behind it would be to either explore, to compare, to collect, to verify, validate, transaction, if you have to buy something, investigative nature, if you have to do background searches, you have to do social media searches. All of these are different flavors or different types of actions that would design your strategy. And it is not just one strategy for each of these different elements that I am showing you: explore, compare, collect, and verification, and all of these. They may be having similarities, or it may be for the same subject, or it could be multiple types of action you have to take for an individual type of research or something specific within the topic. So these are the different action, and each action may require some sort of planning for you to execute your search on the web, especially when we discuss what is involved in doing these actions, or what does these action means, like what is the verification strategy, what is the strategy for comparing things, exploring, and so on. Anyway, after we get to the strategy part, we look at the approach. The approach has different dimensions to it, which is where we are strategizing, and our approach is strategized basically. So you could say that we will be discussing the different approaches to do web search in situations that the approach itself requires some sort of backup, which means that you need supportive documents, you need supportive intelligence that would run or help you in designing your approach. And that is the organizational part, that is more of a backup to your approach, and we will discuss the organization, what it means and what is involved. So focusing more on the approach and the methods which are involved in this approach, we would see that technically, and from the point of view of doing online research as a profession, we have two-pronged approaches, which means that to call ourselves as professional researchers or independent information professionals, we need to understand what is involved in online search and what are some of the traditional research methods. For you to validate and for you to design something that is in the shape of research that you did primarily using internet as your main vehicle of information, you do need to present it and sort of organize it in such a manner that it is understood by other researchers or other people in the industry by relating it or relating what you produce as research reports to traditional research methods. You have to be able to articulate your results or your online research by examination that is involved in traditional methods and methodologies, and some other aspects of it which directly impact online search are some of the research or accepted methods and methodologies in doing sampling, in understanding what is qualitative and what is quantitative data, and some of the legal aspects you have to cover also. If it is a human recruitment that you have to do, then we are talking about so many layers in the traditional research. And for us to understand the methods of or different approaches or methodology for doing web search, we also have to have some sort of a background and understanding of what is involved in traditional search. Let's go to the next one. So let's again come back to the strategy, because we are still talking about part one, which is the strategizing and the approach to doing web search. Defining your search and research objective first, which is where we were before, like the purpose of it. We need to answer some of the questions, like why is there a need for search, depending on who your audience is, like who needs it, and if the search is involved, then what is the primary objective of the search? Would it be collection of information, as we discussed right here? Are you exploring something? Are you verifying or validating some facts? Are you comparing products or services? Is it to do with analytics of some sort? Is it the raw data you have to collect, or you have to collect qualitative data or quantitative data? Is it investigative? Would the investigative involve social network? So the objective needs to be figured out and has to be very precisely put as the objective of your search. Or it could be a research problem, or it could even be a search that is only not on a long term basis. It is a small contract, a few facts you have to find, or few things you have to verify. It could be short term, long term, and it depends on what industry it is addressing, and so on. So why is there a need for search? Who needs it? Like who would be the ultimate beneficiary of this? Or what is the need? Like would it be used by the shareholders or as third party opinion, where you are basically involved with the with the investors, shareholders, bankers, third party, outside party? Or would it be for the management? Or would it be something that is to be mm, it is of a nature that requires a very methodical approach to collecting data? Or if the data is important, or how the research is going to impact the decision making. So the importance of the research has to be evaluated. What are the risks levels involved? When we talk about risk levels, we need it's part of the planning. So you have to see if your data sources are valid, or they are date sensitive, or if that sort of information is going to sort of create a conflict of interest somewhere, and so on and so forth. So there is a risk mitigation that you need to be aware of, and the client or whoever you're doing research for would identify those risks for you. And on the other hand, you would also be able to assess based on the objective of the research. You should be able to assess on your own some sort of risks that are involved in your research. And then reliability levels. All of these are directly or indirectly interconnected. Okay. So these are the questions, and that needs to be answered. So the objective can be clarified, and it is crisp and crystal clear. Now, this is where everything starts, something that you would probably looking forward to, and this is where the expectation is for us to give you some of the overview of strategies that are involved. and what it means when we talk about the approach, when we talk about methods and organization. So you could see at the top, we have these three blocks, and they are interconnected, or they sort of back each other up, and they don't exist without one of them absent. So three elements, which is the method, the approach, and the organization. These three elements we will discuss. In under each of these headings, you would see these columns. So let's just look at the first column here, which is what is talking about the approach. And these blocks that you see with the heading, which says primary tools, secondary tools, assistive tools, this is where we are going to figure out and get an understanding of what is involved in the approach part. Then the second column is the methods, and there's online research methods and traditional research methods. On the left, you could see a summary with the heading, and all of these are mentioned right here on the right hand side. So I'm not going to discuss what is on the left. Let's just look at the visuals and get a more clearer picture of what it means. So when we are talking about the approach to web search or research part, we are going to look at some of the elements or some of the tools, we call them, or you could say that some of the essentials that we need to learn or to be skilled about and to have an understanding before we actually start to do our web search. And we have divided these into primary tools, which means that everything in these blocks, or you could see that there's demarcation of boxes, and inside of these you could see all these um, different types, or you could say the different categories of skills that we have mentioned here. And this is an overview. So keep in mind, when we are talking about overview, we are not getting into the detailed portion of what it entails specifically. But in general, since you all or most of you must have done your search or research, or that's probably what brought you here in the webinar in the first place, you have an idea what is web search and research part, having used it extensively. So what we will look at is the overview. The primary tools is of more concern to us. Secondary tools and assistive tools we will just touch upon briefly, and then we would see how one of these or any of these are connected by following these connectors, I would say, identified in color fonts. So let's stick to, or let's just keep going with the first column where it says primary tools. Primary tools involve your skills to do keyword search or select keywords, how to create search phrases. There's a construction of search phrases which involves a lot of sophistication and your knowledge about using certain type of you could say notations like quotation marks to create search phrase, how you would be able to switch things or words between the phrases you create, or by changing the position of the phrases, or replacing certain words, and so on. So this is a sort of methodology that we are going to discuss as well. So anything that you see in these blocks, which is what I have identified by using or separating this part from the secondary tools and assistive tools, only because we will be discussing each and individual type of tools or expertise that you require as web researchers within named inside of these boxes. Rest of it we would not be going in depth. So let's just look at the first one. What we will be looking at is how to select and apply keywords and create search phrases. Second thing that is very important, and I believe that if you are not a professional researcher, you probably wouldn't pay heed or would probably not think of some of these as important and significant parts of your creating search phrases or even search queries. That is intent refinement, which means that you are actually dealing with the search engine that runs on algorithms, and it is learned algorithms with a combination of optimization and some other technical ways of doing mathematical functions. that sort of is not revealed, something that remains hidden, and Google is very secretive about it. Most of us, in fact, you could say, like, whatever information we are able to collect out of discovering what are the different sets of algorithmic properties that are displayed by Google. We have to look at the search results and pretty much make a lot of assumptions. But our association, for instance, whose main objective is really to figure out how to do online search, we are totally engaged in figuring those elements and to discover certain elements hidden otherwise by Google. So intent is one of them. Intent refinement is the key, where you would expect the machine to understand in what sense you have used certain words, in what it's not going to understand your sentiments. It won't know what your actual intent of writing those words is. And there are several different instances where language can be a barrier, where you are not able to express in what tone or in what sense you have applied those wordings. So intent refinement is important, and with that comes the query refinement, which is what we are going to discuss, and also see in intent refinement how does the search engine apply its own wisdom and its own intelligence to complement what you have written, to give it a better understanding, or for it to understand better what you're talking about. Then we've got another element that we call reduce implied context, which means that the search engine has ways of collecting your history, your the way you have used the search, with the history that's collected by the browsers, and there could be so many different signals that gets interpreted by the search engine, and based on that it has created its own mindset or meaning, like it is creating an implied context or giving a context to your search words, with not being satisfied just with the intent refinement. It also has a way of thrusting or pushing some of its own judgment or its own implied context to add to your expressed search query, which is search terms, could be keywords, set of keywords, or search phrases. So when we say search terms, it could mean keywords, search phrases, and we don't have to keep using like keywords and search phrases like separately. We could just call it search terms. Search terms means, generally in the way we apply it, is when more than one word is used, and basically more than two words are applied to create a search phrase. So in the general definition of it, the search term we are going to refer more frequently, as if it means both things like keywords and the search phrases. So implied context is what is to be understood, and that's what we are going to give you an overview about. Then applied query restraints is of course your search operators you use, and there are two different kinds. One is the Boolean types, or the ones that are not necessarily the same as advanced search operators because of their nature of their behavior. We finished up the applied query restraints by expressing what it means. We don't have to know at this point what it entails and how we're going to use them. The objective is for you to understand what are the primary tools. You need skills to understand and apply and actually execute those search queries, and be able to use certain type of information and certain tools which assist you in doing your online research. Online research is not one event or one set of keywords or something that you are pretty much familiar in ways it is explained on the internet and some of the tutorials you get to see. It gives you a very simplified version, and it gives you certain open-ended, you could say, directions, and then you have to discover the rest on your own. I don't want you to get lost in that sort of a maze that is out there. But what I'm explaining with primary tools is for you to focus on certain elements, you could say, which would require the expertise or some sort of skills to be able to overcome these. Consider these as tools and as some of the directions or some of the elements that you have to develop your skills on, but not as something which you can ignore or you could just pick and choose just because you know how to select keywords or just write beautiful search phrases. You have won the battle, you are all prepared. These elements, each one of them, are a world in their own. They have their own science applied to it. And for you to have this understanding of at least these elements that I'm talking about would make it or will be a differentiator. And now we've got applied query search, now browser adjustment, internet filter, bubble, language, region. These are just some of the wordings I've used, not for you to have a complete understanding, but get a general understanding where we are talking about certain elements or technical things that you have to do as online researcher, someone who has to do research on regular basis using the browser. Depending on the type of browser you're using, there are several adjustments you have to do. Adjustments that hides or makes certain information anonymous, because those informations are being used to direct you or to have implied context given to your search. So the meaning to your search or the way the search engine is going to respond to your query would appear different or would show different results. You don't want that. So when you are preparing your search as a serious search which requires a non-biased or a search that has to do with another region or another country, some sort of information that you have to collect by not giving the indication that you are in a location X, but rather you would make it anonymous in terms of securing your IP addresses. Then you have to use your VPN or you have to adjust your browser to not respond to the location. And a lot of times we just make it default onto the you could say that, let's say North American side or US. So sort of get that sorted out. Then we've got internet filter bubble. That is where we are going to discuss what it means. An internet bubble, basically at this point, all I can tell you is that it traps you into an environment, or it considers a certain environment which gives it an attributes that confine or put a demarcation of your search results to stick to or be driven by certain restraints, and that bubble needs to be broken so that you are able to get out of it, and the search engine is not going to deliver something which is imposed or considered some sort of signals as being more localized or pertaining to your search habits or the way you have used your search browser. So anyway, language, region, censorship. So again, we are just talking in general. We are talking about the primary elements and tools. And what we have indicated with these colored, you could say these are arrows or pointers. It is just talking about what is involved in this in terms of online search. And because all these or primary tools we are talking about refers to online search, this is why it is explained under the heading of online search, and within the broader heading of methods or methodology we are going to apply. So each element which is more explained under the box online search right here is only giving you a brief on what could require a lot of understanding and a skill in each area to know how to tackle all these different tools and how to use these tools. Then we've got secondary tools right here, which is your advanced search filters, search by information categories, which is your main navigation at the top of your browser that says image search, that says all, that says news and all that. So though you have all those built into your browser, those are secondary tools. We don't apply those or we don't use them a lot when we are creating precision search queries or proximity search queries, which is going to restrain put your keywords into a perspective of what you intend to search, or it is going to translate your intent best. by giving it a better direction. So those are the type of searches we are really focused on. Everything else which is driven by the buttons or utilities or tools that are embedded in the web browser is for anyone to use, and depending on what their utilization is, and as long as you understand some of the restraints and also understand the advantages of using them, you should be able to combine it with your search queries, and do so many different things with it and use it to your advantage. Then we've got other indicators which come as a predictive tool or suggestive tools, that is actually driven by the intelligence collected by the search engine based on the collective wisdom of the history, or some of the predictive tools are also mentioned, like whoever searched this also search for this, whoever or where you see that there is a drop down when you write few words, it starts to give you search phrases, something that everybody else has been using as a recommendation or a suggestive tools. So these tools are to be understood and to be taken advantage of for many different reasons. And if we are to ignore any one of these as researchers and depend entirely on our keywords and search query that we build, then pretty much we would basically be losing that advantage. So it is, having an understanding or the approach to your search means that you should have skills to also be able to leverage and use some of these tools, like the ones that we just discussed. Recommended search is again some of the keywords or search phrases that show up towards the end of the search page, and I pay a lot of attention to it. And for that reason, I would consider it as an important tool. But in our column, in our approach, this is considered secondary tools. And then there are assistive tools, which means that there are specialized search engines. By the way, I don't know if you know that there is a directory which is part of the organization that we would also discuss quickly. And we are just running short on time. I'm about 4 minutes over on this slide, as my time indicates, but still we'll give it our best. And for any reason, like I said, if you don't understand something, just write it in a chat and leave it there, and I'll get to it. I'll show you that. So assistive tools means that there is specialized search engines that would search for certain type of file formats. It would have certain type of logic built into it, that unlike Google is not just collecting information, but it is actually bringing certain specific type of information from specific sources. Or it could be something which is got historical archives, or cache, or some pages that you want to collect from the past for websites that don't exist anymore. So those are specialized search engines. Then there is different browsers you could use. If you're using, let's suppose we are using Google in North America, which is more which has got a huge and larger index, so it gives a more variety of information. And pretty much it is standard. Anyone using Google tries not to use Yahoo as much, or some people use Yahoo for other reasons, while Google is used for research. Yahoo may be good for entertainment, news, or some other, depending. So in North America, generally, let's say Google, Yahoo, and Bing are important. But if you have to do a search, let's say in Ukraine or Eastern Europe, the best search engine would be Yandex, for instance, because that is what does the search for them. No, it's not a language barrier anymore, so it's not about interpretation or the language translation, or that. These are not the primary reasons why people use Yandex. They use Yandex because it collects index of web pages which is really specific to their region, and therefore more information is trickled down out through the indexes that are created on the Eastern European side, including Russia. In Japan, you would be surprised. Yahoo is more important. Yahoo is designed differently. If you look at the Yahoo in Japan, it is designed different. So depending on what your need is, and depending on the type of information you require, research you're doing, some of the research reports are more expensive to collect in North America. but you can always get something on that subject from Eastern Europe. A lot of people collect it, then translate and use it for their own purposes. Bias in news is overcome by collecting information using different browsers. Google can do the same thing, but like I said, when it is a localized browser more used on that part of the world, then obviously it has its own utility and advantages. And so browser is one selection that you have to consider as an assistive tool. Online directories are there, databases are there, deep web search is there, specialized software, so these are all assistive tools. So this is how we are going to approach, but more so we are going to talk about this column, which is online search. And then let's look at what traditional research means. Traditional research means that you are qualified to um, do not only do research but also interpret your research result, present it or articulate them in a way that is understood across the industry. Whoever is collecting some research from you, as let's say an information vendor or a researcher, they would have certain expectations that would apply, where you're using some uniform terminologies recognized in the research industry. Sampling sizes, recruitments, qualitative analysis, quantitative. What does that mean? What part of your data can be translated in from qualitative to quantitative, or what qualitative methods you have used? Preparing questionnaires for your surveys, polls, virtual platforms, social media experiments, and so on. Now, let's look at the organization quickly. What organization means is like your back office. When you are doing research work, there's certain there is one thing when we talk about tools and approach and the methods we adopt. An organization simply means that everything you would need to support your methods and approach, which also means that you should be aware of or have a knowledge of collection of information that is available or readily available when you need it. So organize folders and bookmarks, collection of PDFs, library of real time, certain information you need in real time. If you're doing an ongoing project with a client or for a client, and you feel that you need on time information or that information has to be time sensitive, then you apply RSS feed, which means that these are the real time information that gets uh, fed onto your site on at the time it happens. So any change on the site where the information changes, or the article, or if it is a developing story, or it is a breaking story, it would obviously you're following it and you need that to be available to you on time basis. And for that reason you should have feeds or certain type of software or codes that you can use on your site. But we are not getting into that technicality. Real time feeds is one of them, so one of the resources. Then library of portals, groups, forums. You should have memberships. No need to open up membership for something or within a group that belongs to researchers or your fellow professionals. You should already have a membership, you should be part of the groups, and so on and so forth. So you need to have all these resources, and these have to be organized properly. So it needs to be indexed, it needs to be identified, it needs to be available when you need it and readily available. Then you got data safe, which means your passwords, your when you're dealing with information, you're not only dealing with a small sporadic information pieces, but you also collect that information from three different sources. One is your client, which shares certain information for which you need to be responsible and you are the caretaker. Second is that the data that you subscribe to, which you pay for and which you can reuse. Then the third thing, of course, is your own data, which could be any type of data, information, files, folders, needs to be safe and secure. Subscriptions you have to maintain that. Legal documents, contracts, things of that nature. Marketing and sales docs, and so on. So these are all supportive. Methods is what we will be discussing for online traditional and approach. Next, we will get on to the slide that is going to give us the real story about how the keyword search is to be done, what is the meaning of intent, what is the context that we have to be careful about and apply in our search queries. and what and where does some of the search operators work, and what are different types of operators. There are two types, as I mentioned. There is basics, or basic type. We'd like to call them Boolean operators, or you could say somebody has labeled them as basic. There is no history of where it came from, but let's suppose, I mean, it doesn't matter, as long as they're operators, it's good enough. But to call them basic, well, they are more essential and they are most important. You cannot do advanced search or use advanced search operators without having a very good, clear, and very thoughtful and very precise understanding of how to use those operators. Because remember, anything that is limited or has a limited flexibility, you need to be extra creative. If we have three operators, means that we have to work with only three when we ideally need 10, say, for instance. But this is what they give us. They give us three major Boolean operators to work with. So it becomes more difficult, and you have to be more creative in using them because of the limitations. Same thing applies with advanced search operators. Whatever we have in advanced search, we have to be very creative, have a clear cut understanding of how to use them, what are some of the restraints, how one operator may not work with the other, how two operators would work best, how three operators would create problems, how one operator can be used against another operator or would negate the utility of another operator, and how those operators and the keywords need to have certain gaps or certain notations have to be placed within those operators or your search query. We call it a search query string. String means it's a length of characters or length of words that includes both alpha and numeric characters, meaning that it could be advanced search operators alongside Boolean operators, alongside keywords and search phrases, just to create a query phrase or a search phrase or a search string. So anyway, that's just the jargon, that's just the terminology. Okay, so we have a slide open here. It is talking about removing the ambiguity in your search queries, and the process for effective, for building your effective search queries. This is what is explained 1 through 6. Selection of keywords, it is a very important skill. It's not just about the keywords, it's the overall view of how you are using it to translate your intent, and you, especially when you're building your search phrases. We have to analyze keywords and search phrases. We have to review intent translation for search engine. The better we understand how the search engine operates and understands the linguistically, the meaning behind your search words is important. So we would touch upon what the intent translation is from the search engine side. Then we are going to talk about the context that you give to your search, which means by adding additional words or adding certain words which would reinforce the meaning of your search query. And then, when to replace, remove restraints like operators, how to move them. And remember, anytime that you're doing your or creating your search planning, or you are designing something ahead of doing your search, you would not think of it as a one-time event or a one-time execution of your query. You would always have to look at the search results to understand how the search is returning it, or how search is interpreting your search terms. And then based on that, you're going to refine it, you're going to make it better, you're going to substitute words. This is what it means when we talk about add, replace, remove search restraints. Reshuffle words, that is another art of moving your words and search phrases by making certain words as more important than others, or ensuring that your primary keywords are recognized, or your secondary keywords that are reinforcing your primary keywords are giving a better meaning by substitution or using synonyms, without depending too much on how the search engine is going to automatically use its own semantics or search intelligence. So the more explicit you are in your queries and more refinement you do on your own, you are more in control basically. And that's what is required when we are building effective search queries. So let's look at what some of the search ambiguities we are going to discuss, and this is pretty much a basic approach. So let's not confuse it with learning how to create your search queries with the search terms and the keywords. Let's look at them based on what it means when we are giving the first word to the search. For instance, Java over here could mean three different things. It could mean Java coffee, it could mean the island Java in Indonesia, or it could be the language or the software Java. So to give it a better meaning, you need to give it a secondary reference or call it a primary in this case where Java and coffee has to be used together. So being more expressive, being more explicit. And here when you are typing or while you're typing, you would notice that there is a itinerary or a drop down type of options that the search engine is suggesting, and this is based on where it is getting confused and where it finds that you could use better terms, and therefore it is suggesting that you could have used any of these. So Java coffee shop or Java coffee house could be two options. So always look at what is being suggested when you are typing your search queries. The important part of you designing your search terms or search phrases is to understand what in your search terms that you have used, in this case indicated by three fonts and three colors, but they're just three keywords, and together they make it into a search phrase, but without putting them within quotation marks, assuming that we are not learning notations and anything that creates a search phrase. But for now, let's just say that these are three words, but together they are considered single search phrase. However, for understanding of what could be the primary keywords in while we are looking at just three words, means that if we remove any of these, like internet, supposing we remove from these three words, then the meaning would change. It means that it would just be talking about research industries without having to do with internet. And if we remove internet, or if we remove research from the internet, then it is talking about internet industry. So it is going to create a sort of a sense for us to understand that in losing any of these keywords or two of these, or changing or reshuffling any of these keywords would have an impact on the intent translation, and therefore all three of these will be considered as primary search words or primary keywords. We need to make this distinction, and we need to give instructions to others who are doing search for us. Let's suppose you are someone who is a program manager or someone who is responsible for handing out research to your colleagues or anyone in your staff or management. You still need to give them instructions, and one of those instructions would be to identify the primary keywords so that those keywords would remain intact no matter what else you put add to the search query with the added words or other context that you put inside of it would still not kill the meaning or would not change, make any changes to the primary keyword. So you have to identify primary keywords and hand it over to whoever is to do the rest of the searches. Then the secondary keywords are slightly more optional, and if you do provide secondary keywords, which means that keywords that would give it a better context. And in this case, supposing we are looking for a program or a training program or a certification, anything to do with internet research, we would give instructions by giving two keywords like internet and research as the primary keywords, and leaving the third one as an option for the researcher to consider as a secondary keyword, which means the secondary keywords can be changed, could be substituted, or could be eliminated, or there could be more words added, but nothing would change when you are talking about internet research as two words together being primary keywords. And that's what needs to be distinguished when you're creating or giving or delegating your search to someone. There are two different ways of expressing the search query for the search engine. One of them are the explicit signal, which means whatever you've written or instructed the search to operate with. And the implicit signals, as we will discuss later, next slide, are the ones that gives context or translates intent by the learned theorems or the learned history of the search that sort of gives it a meaning of its own, or it adds to the explicit signals. Now, what is explicit signals? In terms of the three words we have used here: internet, research, certification. And this is getting more granular. This is where, when you're doing online search, it is a very time consuming sort of exercise if it is a search of a serious nature, and you need to conserve the time and give better instructions. For that reason, you have to make your search terms more granular, or you have to identify those elements or those individual words as I've shown here in as in one as a head word, or the second word as a modifier, and a tail, which means that a head word is more of a primary nature and you don't want to change it. Modifier means that you can replace it, which means that you can replace research with search, for instance. And the tail words are the ones that you add to for additional context, or to give it or to support the modifier and the head. So when you have to do that, then you do need to split your search terms into, or individual words into, head, modifier, and tail. The secondary context, which is what we attribute to the tail word, in this case, in the top layer, which is one, the tail word is certification. In the second instance, you could see that we can even combine two words, which is to add the header or the head word with the modifier to create a single primary context or a single primary search term, which means it should not be changed. And then we could shift the tail word as a modifier and then leave a space for whoever is to construct a search query to add additional words we call contextual words, or the tail words. That means you can add several tail words, you can substitute tail words, you can do a lot of maneuvering with the tail. And modifier you can substitute, but you don't actually replace it with any other word that would have a different meaning. So understanding what the header is, what the modifier is, what the tail is in a search term is also very important. And the third concept, and the concept which I don't have a slide, is is a short tail and a long tail. Short tail means that you have less keywords, which means with less keywords you are expanding your search, or the search you will get a lot more search results. That means it is not explained, or it is not explicit enough, or it does not have a lot of context attached to it, and the type of search you're doing is more of exploratory nature, which means you're not sure exactly what you need, but you are trying to define what you could need, or what could be a better substitute in your search to work with, or to find as an indicator that it would be a piece of information that you would need more than the one that you initially started your search with. So it is going to be a broader search if you have less words, less explicit, less context, more search results. And we call it short tail. The long tail we call more, we sort of name it as precision search, or something that has a lot more context attached to it. and therefore makes it easier for search to interpret. And you use a long term, or a long tail, sorry, rather, when you are sure of what you require, or you can use some alternatives to what the primary search is supposed to be. So to know what is short tail and long tail is also important. It's part of your designing your search, where you are strategizing and organizing it. At that point, you would need to do that. Let's look at this one. Okay, so this is interesting. This is where it is showing intent. It is talking about a certain type of information on this chart, especially on the right hand side. Let's not worry about what's on the left. These different headings that we have on the left hand side, we don't need to worry about it. We have a whole chart here that talks about the implicit meaning, or something that the search engine impose on your explicit search or explicit search string that you create. And that involves different stages or different ways of how the search is going to use its semantics or its built-in intelligence. We call it semantics. It's because it's textual intelligence, which means it is to do with the science of linguistics. And it sort of has an integration of several elements, including behavioral patterns, trends, and it looks at internal factors which are collected as pieces of information while you're doing your browsing. And then it applies your regional factors, or your localization, or where you're searching from, plus other attributes. And there are more than 200 signals attached to it. For now, let's look at what is implicit, meaning that what the search engine is going to perceive and apply as onto your search queries. It is going to collect your browsing data. It could be a short term or a long term, which means that a short term would be like within a same session or session that you did not log off from. Like anytime you log into a Chrome browser, for example, you already have a relationship established between yourself and the Google environment, for instance. And therefore, that bridge is a sort of a vehicle of collecting information and sharing information. And that information could be something that is collected recently, which means your recent behavior, and it could be a long term history, which could go months prior to what you have been searching for. And all that information is collected and interpreted and used not against you necessarily, especially given the privacy policy and whatever Google claims to use it for. I would think that this information is supposed to be, or according to Google, supposed to make your user experience better. And therefore, let's look at the internet browsing data collection, profile and personal information, which is, when you are registering, or registering with the Chrome, for instance, or Google, you create that profile. Then you've got communication data like emails, chats. Emails, by the way, are not really tapped into as individual emails, but rather certain attributes or certain type of elements that gives a view or a picture to Google in a certain way, which we are not going to discuss right now. But just to give you a broader idea, it just sort of creates an ontology. That means it creates a relationship. And that relationship is not internal, it is a relationship between yourself and the entities. That could be a business, that could be social media, it could be any other activity outside of your own domain of your search. But email information is something that sits there, and in whatever ways they use it, they apply it in the ontology intelligence, which I just mentioned. There's your chats, your social media accounts, and so on. Then you've got personalization, which means this is where the search is going to interpret all that is collected from the top layer, for example, like personalization, which means your behavior, like type of products you're interested in, something that sort of gives an idea to the search engine that with the personalization, you have defined your interest and your behavioral patterns in how you're going to use the search engine. Localization is where you use your devices mostly. It includes the smartphone as well that you carry and you travel with. Your marketing, trends, advertisements, everything has an impact when translated by the search engine, so that it gets built into a wisdom that can be applied as a customized or more, you could say, in an implied way, enforced onto your search queries. Then we have got another set which says, or which really transfers the intelligence collected in the first two layers into actionable knowledge, which means now the search engine in the layer that you see right here, which is actually highlighted in this layer, it is saying that how it is going to help the user. It is going to give you the suggestions, the related searches, the local area search, autofill forms. People also ask autocomplete, intent prediction, and so on. So all these are created based on the first and the second layer, which sort of makes it a more personalized or a user friendly, or you could say makes the user experience better, and so on and so forth. So we don't have to go any further or in the deeper layers. So this is to give you an idea of how it is collecting the implied characteristics of how you use your search browser. Then, and the reason why I'm explaining this is for you to also understand that by having this knowledge of knowing what is being collected and used by the search engine, you would also be able to overcome these if you consider them as barriers. In certain searches, you want to overcome these as if these are the barriers that you have to cross over in order for you to get non-personalized search results. Because a lot of time, especially if your business is to do online research only, then you ought to work with a clean slate, or with something that doesn't carry history or is not imposing anything on your search, should be uh, which should be separated from your personalized intent and behavior. Now, look at another strategy, which is where you have actually created your, well, while you're creating your search queries and you're planning your search phrases or the terms that you want to use, here is a process or a method separate from what we talked about in terms of giving, the identifying primary keywords and secondary keywords. Beyond that, a step beyond that, is the procedure through which we all go through in order for us to actually work on search. That means that there is a process, you can call it, or different stages, or you could say a strategy that helps in the planning of your search. And this is for those who are just starting off in doing online search. Know that there are certain ways in which our mind wants to perceive what we require, what we need, versus how it is being interpreted by the search engine. And because no two people can think exactly the same, and because there is way of expressing how the search queries are to be constructed, if it is a statement of bunch of words put together, versus if you are to ask a question, then there are two ways of approaching on how to place the search queries or how to build the search queries. So there are two patterns. One is that you create a statement. The second is that you create a question, because when you create a question, you are more expressive. But here we are not giving a question to the search engine yet. We are at the planning stage, or we are at the stage where we are processing certain ideas before we. Most welcome, Daniel. Now, in A and B, we've got a statement on the left. We've got questions on the right. Well, basically, these are not the questions. These are extracted keywords from the question. So let's suppose you have created four different questions, and on the left, you just have created the search terms. You place them in box A. You place the B search terms in box B, which is coming from your questions, and then you extract some of the common keywords, and you start creating just the keywords as in C. And once you have created them, then, and this is what we follow. So it is not like it is a sort of a rule or a book. It is just one of the methods that we apply, so that we are collecting the proper or the correct keywords. Based on these keywords, we are going to filter them out into primary keywords and secondary keywords. The next thing we do is we create broad search queries, which is to explore and see if we create less queries with less keywords, which is a sort of combination of words that we have actually filtered out in C. We are going to get more results being a broad search. Less keywords, broad search, more results. When we create a combination of words like 2 or 3 words, we create short-term short phrases. For example, we are going to look at the search results. If we see that the search results are bringing exactly what we require, we are obviously satisfied. If not, we are going to go back and then create a narrow search or long tail, which is the possible phrases that could add more of the context or add additional tail words, or make it a long tail search phrase. So this is where we just keep moving and we keep circling around. Then let's talk about the intent context. Now, what is intent context? I'm going to explain. There is explicit and implicit. Primary context, for example, if we have to use the word Java, we have 3 options. And then if we have just used one word, you would see the search results are returning software, coffee, and island. But this is not good enough. So we are going to add certain other words based on what is the outcome of that search result, or where the snippets are also mentioning alongside Java software. For example, it is mentioning words like training or program. So you know that these words are more popular. And if software is what you're looking for, then the results have given you a clue that you have to use either of these words. So you're going to use Java software training, or you're going to use Java software program. But supposing you use Java software training, now what will happen with training? You would see that there will be 3 of the possibilities, or 3 of the um, results that would be mentioning about the location or the price or the reputation. So the words that will get attached is bringing words like Java software training location, training price, training reputation, and so on. So this part where we are looking at the location, price, and reputation without mentioning it in our search query, this is what is coming from the implicit context. Or you could say the implicit context that the search engine gave is to the location where you have done the search. That is, to point out the IP, or to identify your location with the IP address of your device that you're using, or the internet you're using. Then you've got the price, which is an implicit context. It has more to do with marketing. Search engine definitely would like to bring those marketers or those sponsored ads that are talking about the training programs in Java software, and so the prices would start showing up. The reputation, or if so all these are combinations of different possibilities that the search engine would think of as implicit context, and impose it on your explicit context that involves these wordings: Java software training or Java software program. Similarly with coffee and so on. Anyway, let's move forward. 3 type of queries are determined by the search even before you actually go and look or execute your search, or at the time while you're typing, it is making its own decision. And that this is more at the uh, grander level, or at the overview level of how the search is going to interpret your search results, which means that it is going to identify your keywords to the type of search query, which also means that there would be possibilities of it interpreting your search based on your search terms, whether or not it is a navigational query, an informational, exploratory, or transactional. What does this mean? It means that if it is navigational, you are actually expressing exactly the search words alongside the let's say the website or the domain name, so it is more definitive, you know exactly what you want. So it becomes navigational. When it comes to navigational, search engine would be constrained and would have perimeters set, so it won't really have to make a lot of decision making. If it is transactional, for example, it means that you're looking for a product or you're searching for a price. And it also means that you want to check something or you want to find something that is of that could be a product that can be bought. And in this reference, it would also interpret based on, again, your search keywords that you're using. If you're using the word pricing, if you're using the word buy, or if you are already in the shopping cart somewhere, you logged in, that it would know it is of commercial nature. And then it would also want to know if you want to buy something. So transactional query would bring more search results that are of sponsored advertisements or e-commerce websites that carry the same product, like Amazon would start showing up all the time. You have to be careful when you are typing something. You have to know that these are some of the interpretation or the intent translation that are of implicit nature, and therefore these will be imposed. So you need to cross that barrier of those restrictions to give it a different meaning. Anyway, then you've got, we want to find something, you're exploring something. Search knows that you're moving from one set of keywords to another set of keywords, or from one page of navigation to another, and therefore it knows that it is of informational or exploratory nature. All right. So anyway, so we are going to go as fast as we can. Some of the people are leaving, and I thank them very much for spending the time making it to the webinar and for their interest. And I would like to continue with the rest of us and see if we can finish it off. Give it next 10 minutes, and I think we'll be done. So internet browsing history, we have done that. The internet bubble, as I was saying, and then I have mentioned intent translation and some of the okay, so let's just look at the internet bubble. Internet bubble means that there could be two people, let's say Alex and Corey right here, and both of them are separated by the regional distance. That could be thousands of miles, could be different country or different language, whatever it may be. But supposing both have the same set of search queries using the same browser, same environment, except that their ISPs are different, their region of doing the search is different, the search results would turn out to be different for both of them. For Alex, it would be different in North America. For Corey, let's suppose sitting in Middle East somewhere, would get separate search results. And for that reason, we use VPN a lot of times. That sort of simulates or give an indication to the search engine that you are basically doing your search from another region or another part of the world, so that that particular sort of search results that you're seeking are delivered from that region exclusively and only. Now, the most important part, which some of the participants, I'm sorry that they have left, but for most of us, I guess we'd like to learn, and this was more important than anything else. My opinion is what is involved in designing your search and research, and what are some of the ways in which we tackle the online research. One of the things, or two of the things rather, that we'd like to split online research into is the building or the skill set that you need for building search queries, and the other one is your ability to use certain search tools and utilities. What is involved in search tools and utilities are the browsers, internet search tools. We talked about it, image search or whatever is actually embedded in the web browser, specialized search engines, deep web search. By the way, we have a gift for you for attending and for you to have spent your time today with us with AOFIRS, and we are giving you books or reference guides that sort of has a collective list of different tools that includes the web directories that are important resource for information that we use here. Then we are sharing those tools that are used for verification purposes of certain type of information. Those lists are available to you, and that's another reference guide. And then a guide for specialized search engines, that is the third one. Anyway, so that we will provide as well. The search query, coming to what is involved in search query, is your ability or your skills to identify and work with search keywords and your search operators. Search operators are two types, as I mentioned: basics and advanced search operator. The basic operators are the plus and the or, the not, and the advanced operators, as you can see, are all in title, and they are very peculiar in their design and the way they're structured. You could see that ends with a colon sign. This one is not showing it, but all of these, like in title, in text, would have a colon sign. And for you to also have a good understanding and for your knowledge, you should know that these basic search operators and advanced search operators work together. And for you to say that you can have a complete control or best precision using basic operators alone is not going to cut it. So it is a combination of both of them. And for advanced search operators, I can tell you that it is used, or it is particularly used to query certain area of a web page. Web pages are indexed in certain manner. Certain information is stripped out of those web pages that are collected, and when they are indexed at that time, the entire page or a single web page that gets indexed has different regions or different areas of information, or there is a collection of information written in text that needs to be checked or verified and matched against your search queries. And certain operators would work in certain region. For example, in title, in text, and in URL are actually work on certain areas or certain text that is on the page. File type works in a different manner, that it restricts your search to a certain type of files or file types that we know of, like PDF, Excel, docs, and so on. Site is another constraint that makes sure that your search query is restricted to a certain domain name, and so on and so forth. So these work in a different way, while basic operators work in a way that sort of allows for the search words or keywords. They more or less work with search phrases and keywords initially. So that is why they were called basic search operators. And these ones are responsible for expanding search queries, eliminating certain words that you don't want to be repeated or not to turn up in your search results, and so on and so forth. Then we've got the third element, that is notations and symbols, which you have to understand that notations and symbols are different from the words, or how the notations can be most useful in building very complex queries, or just few search words alongside the notations would bring a lot of precision results, only if you understand how they are used and for what reason and in what situation they are need to be applied. The methods in creating your search queries are twofold and two types. One is we call precision search. That is where we are restricting our search with creating a query that requires results that are absolutely essentially necessary for us to get. And then there is proximity search. That means the instruction sets that we give to the computer, or the keep saying computer, the instruction it is that are passed through the search browser are not definitive enough, or there is some ambiguity there that for which you don't actually know the exact keywords, or you don't know which exact phrase to use, or there is spelling error that you are not sure of, or there could be something that is missing as a total word or number of words in between sentences. Those are the type of search queries that require proximity operators such as around or such as asterisk, which is the placeholder for, we also call it wildcard, that tells the search that this is where the information is missing. Then these are some of the slides which talk about the different elements in a snippet, and we don't have to get into detail, but this is just to give you an idea that there is a script or something of a a language we call HTML language that sort of results in producing the pages that we see as users. So let's suppose that this is a web page we see as users. Anything that works behind it, that sort of is responsible for bringing that page onto you or in front of you as as a nicely outlined and colored with images and different sections and segments on a page that appears to you as a user is different from how the search engine is going to look at it. Means that search engine is going to read the page not through what is presented or what is appearing in front of you as a user, but rather what it reads as a code, because code is what is running behind this page that is responsible for bringing this in the format it is being shown. So anything that gets read is in the back end of it or in the code part, and the all in URL, in URL, in text, and all these advanced operator work in different segments of the code or different areas of this web page, which is carrying type of tags or the enclosures that are labeled or named as name tags of two types: meta tags and non-meta tags. The meta tags are the ones that identify with what could be the main title of the page, and therefore the information that you see on the top as shown in this snippet appears in the title. The link or URL part that is shown is coming from another tag that identifies the page with a certain domain, and that is what is being pulled and identified here. And similarly, the another tag which actually runs in the body of this page. As you can see that we have different segments of these pages. The top one is header, the middle one is the body of text, we call it, and then the one that is at the very bottom we call footer. So whatever gets changed or is more of dynamic nature is the middle part of the body that keeps changing the information, the columns, the text keeps changing, headings keeps changing. All this is queried through the tag or the information which is of non-meta nature, and that is being, I don't expect you to learn the technology part, but because it's an overview and I just want to give you an impression that certain type of advanced search operators needs for you to understand or have the skills to know that those operators would work in certain part of those pages, which is what we are querying eventually, or understandably this is where the index is carrying all those pages that are being queried. So to know what part of or which type of advanced operator is going to work on which part of information, that is specific to the type of or the nature of information you're looking for. For instance, if you're looking for short titles or any limited information with limited keywords, that appears on the top is going to be querying the top part or giving very limited information or matching very limited number of words with the header part. The in-text query, for example, needs to operate in the middle part or body of text, which actually goes through several different non-meta tags or information embedded on those non-meta tags, and therefore it is more in-depth search. And if you need to search certain things that are in-depth or not part of the header or headings, you need to use in-text, and this is the reason why I've mentioned it, not to confuse you with this slide. Next, we don't need that. Knowledge source information. As a researcher, someone who has to actually learn how to do search would have to be also knowledgeable enough to know the direction and where to go and find information, or at least have a collection of ways, or it's like a highway, like information highway means that certain highway 401 is going to take you to a certain direction, or east would take you to another direction, and this is where the highways of informations are. And for you to have a knowledge of where to go to find certain type of information is a valuable resource, and this is another skill that you have to learn. So whatever is being offered um, in the world of internet is so multidimensional, and this is what is mentioned here, there are magazines, subscriptions, SEOs. Let's just look at this slide. In fact, this is easier to explain. Like some of the information resources, we need to understand there are classes of information. Each class of information have certain type of information portals or information forums or platforms. Like forums would have discussion, opinion site has its own sort of information sets where you're collecting qualitative information, opinions, sentiments, what people are saying, what is the murmur, what is the social media talking about, what is the latest. If it is summer season, what are people talking about, who is more in the picture of finding, let's say, well, anyway, so there could be tons of information. We're running short of time, but these slides are telling you where to go, where to find, and what are different flavors, types, and sets of information platforms and what they are known for. Having an understanding of what good the groups are for, what good the information source of forum is, if blogs are more important than articles, if you want detailed account of something, you want to go to articles, you don't want short version of something, don't go to the blogs. Some blogs you're following, some personalities you're following, so it all depends. So you have to create out of this maze, you have to create a sanity and create some sort of structure of how you're going to organize it. Remember, it is part of the organization of how you are going to create your internal libraries and organize ways and means and sort of methods of going on to okay. So let's just talk about now. This slide is more on the descriptive side, and when I give you a copy of this, all you have to do is just go through them. This is as a reference. It's not detailed, but at least it gives you an idea. I don't have to go through all of these, which are internet research challenges. We talked about challenges only because we want to cross over these challenges, identify challenges so we know what to avoid, what to filter out. Skills means that it is a skill or an overall skill set of having the knowledge of not only the advantages of where to go and find the information, but also how to cross over those barriers or certain restrictors which can be inherent in the internet itself, or it could be something something that you have to learn to be able to get to or find your way through it. So anyway, we are going to not discuss this. We would also, since you have already given a lot of time, and I appreciate and I hope that you have learned something or at least got an overview, even though it was very rapid. And I know that for some of you, it may be something that requires, or you have some questions that you're holding back. But I also have to discuss and just to ask you for a few minutes of your time to explain to you what we as an association, what we delivered, and what are the different things or overall different type of knowledge which are truly segments or world of their own, which with their own specialization that we cover in our certifications, in our exams, in our coaching, in our webinars, in our sessions, learning sessions we give online. Some of the things is that you have to understand some technical or have technical knowledge to know how the search engine looks at the looks or collects the web pages, and to have some understanding of technical terminologies that are used in several articles that you read on research or web search, that you may find difficult to understand. There could be some ambiguities. We would like to explain that, make it more explicit and easy to understand for for people who are non-IT or without technical background. As much as we have tried, I hope that it comes across as something that anybody and everybody can use. So that part of technical knowledge we deliver in our courses. Then we talk about traditional research methods, which, as I explained to you, simple or the basic terminologies that are used, and some conventions and methods and rules that are understood across the industry as coming from people who actually are in research work. And then we've got online search skills. That is where we covered 60 to 70% of our course. And we explained all those methods and methodologies when we pointed out the approach and the skill sets required. Then there is a question of ethics of internet, like sample that we collect, the type of information we collect, the privacy issues, and certain type of do's and don'ts that we need to be aware of, like plagiarism, building on somebody's existing work, using someone else's knowledge in our research, and so on and so forth. So ethics are involved, and that are very prime and considered very important in our teaching, and especially in when we are talking about the professionalism and the professional attitude of someone who gets trained as CIRS. They need to have ethics and knowledge about what is considered ethical in the world of internet. And then the internet laws are there, several laws that sort of requires for you to have a very good understanding of intellectual property, privacy laws, what is considered as an infringement, the international jurisdictions, some of the contracts that you signed remotely, especially these days while you're telecommuting or you're working from somewhere else. Then what are the laws involved? So all these elements are covered. We have 5 levels of courses where we are offering purely web search training programs. That is separate from our CIRS, which is considered to be the major qualification or something that we promote and we credentialize with. So this is a little bit separate, and this is based on the requirements and the general interest of people who are purely interested in web search training. So while if you want to take any of those programs, we've got all these levels. We've got level 1, 2, 3, each indicated here by the description. It says web basic web search with keywords and phrases. Then we've got advanced, and then we've got building complex web search. Any one of you who is interested in joining complex web searches, I would suggest that better take at least level 2, if not level 1, before you even consider getting into the building complex web search queries. This is only because we may not be able to explain, or there could be certain drawbacks which would leave a gap between your understanding, building your proficiency, and would really defeat the meaning or the objective of your taking this course. So my recommendation, level 1 and 2. Online investigative research is a level notch higher, which talks about the verification of videos, fake news, websites, talks about email verifications, finding sources of information, due diligence, background checks, offshore accounts, things of that nature that you can find using internet alone. This is not to go out there and actually go and dig into the trash bins and look for clues and information. We are talking about how to do investigative research just using internet as your primary tool for investigations. And there are 2 levels for it. There's a level 4 and 5. It has got 2 parts. So if you go this route, you pretty much accomplished most of what is covered in CIRS. And then there is just a question of bridging the program by taking 2 courses. One is internet law and the other one is the information technology. That is only about 20 to 30%. And the business of internet research, that I would say is only 5%. So 25% to 30% altogether is what you need to cover if you need to do CIRS, going beyond these levels. And by the way, online investigative research, just for clarity, is not part of CIRS. So these 2 parts are important only where your due diligence, and especially for PIs and investigators and government agencies, people who are into digging more information for validation verification, they could go on to online investigative research. After this, whatever we talk about now is totally optional. So if any one of you want to leave, you're most welcome. But I just want to explain what CIR is about. Not that I'm advertising anything. I built this course. I am the author of it, and I'm very proud of it. I need to talk about it because I guess it gives me a little bit of a satisfaction of knowing that I've accomplished something that I can share, and perhaps you would find it useful. These are some of the books that are coming out as part of 5.0 version, which means that we have 26 of these booklets that are covering different topics. There are 4 modules in CIRS. One is networks and internet technology. Second is research methods and online research. Third is research business and business of online research, internet law and ethics. So all of these 1, 2, 3 and 4 have used to be one big book like 500-600 pages. Now we have split them into smaller courses or smaller booklets that makes it really easy for anyone to find or pick up one booklet and understand the whole topic itself that is mentioned as the main topic or the main segment of the module that you are preparing for. So even if you pick up a single booklet, you would find that everything that has to do with topic is totally complete. So we've got like 6 of these here, and so all of these together, put together, are 26 of them. If you want to take our course, you would get these books for free, totally no cost to you. And we are a non-profit, so I want to emphasize that we don't make a whole lot of money. Our objective is really to sustain ourselves and to promote this profession, which is what we call upcoming profession of online research specialist or internet research specialist, a job description that never used to exist before. We want to advocate that. We want to be the ones that want to promote it and to bring it to the attention of those that are responsible for creating job description to consider it as a full-time profession. So that is our main objective. Second is to train people in this area because it is a skill set. It is something that needs to be learned. It is not for Google to just because it is giving you a very easy interface and throwing so much at you, you feel sort of get into that euphoria. So that euphoria is not really for serious research. Even though information is there, but digging and finding it and organizing it properly is most important. And then in the same slide, you will find that all those booklets that we just mentioned, they're described here as with the reference numbers and the subject it covers. So you could see that all 26 of them are listed here with the first, second, third, and fourth, indicating module 1, 2, 3, and 4 for the exams. And then I'm not going to, and by the way, the books that I'm talking about, there are 3 of these which you will get as a bonus, something of appreciation that since you have attended my webinar, I'm going to give you a listing of specialized search engines, internet research, links directory, and web content verification. These are very important booklets. We use it like all the time. And these are not like just small booklets like 20-30 pages. These are about 100-120 150 pages. So it is mostly, you can call it a directory or a reference guide. The fourth one, we're still revising it, reviewing it, and we are adding more to it. So this one is not available right now. And then if you go through the slides, you would see that we have all these modules, and each of these modules or lessons that we are offering, and this is to do with our online classes. I'm going back and I'm turning this on just to give you an indication of how our CRS courses are structured. You could see that we have 10 modules and the hours that it would take are also described here. All in all, there'll be like a 30 hours of online training. I would be giving the course it's going to start on the 19th, I believe, of this month. And there would be 30 hours plus more, usually ends up 40 hours. And you would get access to all the books. You would get access to exams, so on and so forth. So anyway, I think I'm going to conclude at this point. I think we've dealt with quite a bit and a lot of information for you to absorb. So for now, let's just look at any questions. If you have, please let me know if there's something I can answer. If not, we'll just call it a concluded webinar. We took 15 minutes extra. For that I apologize, but I'm still willing to give you another 10-15 minutes. If there's any particular question I can answer, please feel free to ask it now. Let me also go back and see if there were questions that I'm ready to answer. All right, thank you. And I think, thank you. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great evening or a great day or an afternoon. And I would say goodbye and hope to see you. If you want to join me next time, you're most welcome. Go on our website and register in any of our webinars. Thank you. Bye bye.